Hello, and welcome to Guys Dealings with Feelings, the podcast dedicated to addressing men's mental health issues and providing practical solutions. I'm joined by my good friend Jason, who, through years of professional and personal experiences, including trauma and recovery, as well as over 18 years of being a licensed therapist, me being profoundly shaped by the tragic loss of my son, we're here to share what we've learned and continue to discover along the way. If you like what you hear and enjoy the show, please like, follow, share for us. Jason, good to see you.
Hey man, howdy, howdy.
So, in review of last episode where we were discussing, we reviewed the value episode where we talked about we don't even really identify with our values, and kind of the first step you identified to getting towards how you can understand what you even truly value and want was to understand and recognize having feelings and feeling them, experiencing them, having some clarity around them. We talked about how culture has led to the dynamics of the health. If we want to say narrow it down, we talk on the show a lot about mental health is just health. So the health crisis in this country, from what we eat and the obesity crisis with diabetes and heart disease, on to the mental health crisis, which has led to anxiety levels, depression levels off the charts, suicide levels off the charts. And if we narrow it down to men, who we kind of target here, then it's even more alarming how that's gone up. And then in the end, we were talking about how we've been patterned, even creeping into, we knew about subliminal messages. I don't know what years those were. I think it was either when we were kids or right before we were born, but they were using the television for subliminal messaging. And, we knew that was wrong. And, all the talk when we were kids, if you run a record backwards, it's got, I don't know, Alice Cooper saying you need to rip the head off of chickens or something. Anyway,
And I used to watch Disney movies that had all those subliminal messages in them. Did you ever do that when you were a kid? The Lion King, in the part where there's a part in the Lion King where the main character, I can't remember the guy's, the prince says, "Good teenagers, good kitty, good teenagers have sex." Have you ever seen that in?
Oh no.
Yeah, there. Anyway,
No,
so keep going. Yeah, just
stuff like that.
stuff
Yeah,
like
they
that.
just
Yeah.
stuff has been snuck in on us. Well, it's gotten to the point where, um, and to more cloud the picture, that's all pointed out like, oh no, you shouldn't be doing that. That's so taboo. You shouldn't do that, and they'll make rules and laws against it doing. And then all the while, there's a clear manipulation of our existence, um, based on where we live. And it's hard for us to identify with this. And so today we're going to kind of jump over into communication and how this is affecting our communication, as well as um, maybe how we can communicate a little better. I know I've learned a lot recently. I say recently, in the last 5-6 years, about just how to communicate with other human beings, whether it's a spouse, partner, child, friend, whatever the human being may be, coworker. It's if you can understand that if you don't even know who you are, how in the hell is somebody else supposed to know who you are and then understand why you're coming across like you are? If we can see that and see ourselves as objective beings outside of ourselves and say, if I didn't know me, how would this sound? And if it would sound like an asshole and you think it sounds like an asshole, then it probably is going to sound like an asshole to whoever you're talking to, whether she's been living with you for 20 years or not. Just because someone's gotten used to you being a jerk doesn't mean that you're not being a jerk. And intentions are definitely, I think intentions are definitely relevant, but when we're upsetting others or fouling up communication, it's really on the ear of the individual receiving it and not the intention of the person delivering, because we're trying to communicate. We're trying to express ourselves. And if we've done so in a manner that takes them in the opposite direction than we wanted to, then we fucked up the communication part. And so, let's dive into that kind of how has culture kind of driven us, I guess, apart, which you touched on a little bit last time, but also how it's fucked up our communication style, and whether that means that now all of a sudden I've either got to be like this super macho guy who wants to throw everybody around, or what, that if I'm not that, then I'm some weakling who gets run over and women don't respect me. And I'm not either one of those people, and I think I'm just fine. But I've understand now that when I'm looking around, that's kind of the polar. If we look at our right wing and left wing politics, I think everything's kind of polarizing the same way. In this whole idea of men need to be, I don't know. I think Mark Zuckerberg, which was kind of funny to hear him say it, came out and said something about men need to be more manly. I was like, yo, somebody talked to you, didn't they,
Yeah,
bro?
so so he's out there doing MMA stuff,
Yeah,
and
he's lifted as many weights as he can, and he's getting where he can fight real good and all
yeah,
that stuff. But anyway, uh, I understand what's happening, and I understand the man who's run over, and I understand the flaws that come with that, and I understand the man who's trying to be too macho or Brutus or whatever, and he ends up treating women and other people like shit. Neither of those, I think, is where we want to be. We want to be a balanced human being. But how has culture kind of driven us? That's just one idea of how culture has driven men to communicate in different ways, whether it's the guy getting run over who's like, oh, just whatever you want to do, or it's the guy's like, we're going to do it my goddamn way. Either one, both of them are off.
yeah,
And both
yeah,
of them, I think, are turnoffs, not just to the person they're trying to attract, but also to the people who are around them who they've already attracted. It's there's going to be, so often I think we look around and say, well, shit, I try to communicate, but Billy's such a jackass that I can't hardly talk to the guy. Well, he's in your life because y'all had jackass in common. And so just because you're trying to come off jackass doesn't mean Billy's on board with
yeah,
you.
right.
So it may be that we have to change our community a little bit if we're going to change. And again, that's tough, and that's hard. Like, hell, I've known Billy since high school. And I mean, Billy'd kill for me, and I know that. Well, just tell Billy until he's done being a jackass. He can call you if it's time to murder somebody. But until then, you're going to change your own
Good.
tires. And
Yeah.
yeah, and you're going to find somebody who's not a jackass to help you build your barn or whatever. So what did you think about all that?
Yeah, there's a lot, right? Let me. I really like just working to articulate specifically kind of what I'm referring to when I use the phrase culture, right? Or just when I refer to culture. Um, and I want I guess I want to make a distinction, right? Like I'm not referring to how would I say this? Like universal human needs and desires, right? That are cross border, that are just universal, right? Our desires for safety and connection and peace, and like these are just universal human things. Um, so just imagine, right? Just take a person born in Donaldson, Tennessee, right? And then and then contrast that with a person born in the Amazon rainforest, right? So that being comes into the world, right? Um, they're given a story. They're given a story and a myth of how this all came to be. It's without exception, right? Do you get what I mean? So in both spaces, the ancestors or the ones before pass on the knowledge of what they've come to understand about this world and themselves, right? You know what I mean? And so then we're given a story around who we are, where we come from, and where we're going, uh, right? It will be a part of every story, right? Those components, and
They teach, sorry, I got to
please,
interject. They
please.
also emotional attachments to the circumstances and events, like we discussed in the last episode. That's taught to us. How we react to certain things, that's also taught to us. I think that gets lost. It did for me anyway. But please go ahead.
Yeah. So, well, then let's just take the person that was. So we're born into this culture, and then we go and we begin experiencing a process that people will refer to as conditioning, right? right? We're given a name. Um, whatever family system that we're in will have its own sort of culture. Like, for instance, maybe a part of the family culture is don't talk about things. Just sweep it under the rug. Just keep moving, right? All right. So just think about what that teaches. Maybe just as another example, maybe a person grows up in a situation where the expression of anger is not welcome. Okay, and so that being, as a part of their conditioning, is taught that anger is not okay. Okay, so then what will happen in the process of conditioning, in order to meet our caregivers' needs, is we will start to relate internally to anger in a particular way, and we'll start to do things like avoid, repress, suppress. We will not even relate to anger, right? Because we're trying to give our caregivers what they are telling us they want. And so we'll start to repress things and kind of contort into a pretzel to give the people in our lives and the world what we're interpreting they want. Does that make sense? So those are just some examples of conditioning, right? And then this is what this is American, and I mean, a lot of the messages we get are very implicit. They're not very explicit, right? And so again, culture is just like the air we breathe and the water we drink. It shapes the way we think. It shapes our relationship with our internal environment, which is the only thing that there is for us, is our internal environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we don't really experience the world out here. We experience the world in here through the body, right? And the thing that I'm pointing out mostly, or wanting all of us within this culture to reflect on, is how the focus of Western culture is outside of us. So think about the even like the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment period in the West, right? This is going to be a radical oversimplification, but essentially it was like human beings looking into the world using our five senses to come up with more answers of who are we? What is this world? Right? And it was a rejection in a way from the domination of the church at the time. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what the church was saying is that if you want to access divinity, you have to come through us. Okay. And and so as humans, at a point, we rejected that notion. Okay. The problem in the West is we rejected it essentially wholeheartedly. We
We threw the baby out with
we
the
threw the
bathwater.
baby out with the bathwater, and so here's what often happens here, and this all is leading to where I'm. So this is essentially what happens here. People, we're born into this culture, which is materialistic, focused on getting things on the outside to deal with things on the inside. Okay, and and as that becomes more and more frustrating, right? We're not really aware of what's happening. So it seems to us that our dissatisfaction and our sense of lack and focus on the future, it seems to us that's what needs to be fixed in order to feel differently, right? So we have a focus on everything outside of ourself, okay? And so many of us have never really asked the question, who am I?
Yeah.
It's not a place that we go. We're too busy and stressed, and we're too busy trying to get the things that we've been conditioned to believe we need.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't have our attention internally on our thinking patterns, on our reactions, our reactivity, right? And so we are deeply removed from real self awareness. Okay, which is the the foundation of communication, right? Um, there's a, you ever heard of nonviolent communication?
Um, no, not specifically that.
It emerged in the 60s and 70s. This guy's, I think his name's Marshall Rosenberg. He was reflecting on our communication patterns in the West. He was doing bigger things. He spent some time in the Middle East and trying to do some things with the Palestinians, and he was doing some pretty big work. And and one of the things that he noticed, he started just, I guess you could say, noticing patterns in the way that we communicate. And and what he noticed. So first, let's think about what it is that we're communicating to each other. Let's just take a husband and a wife. What are two people working to communicate to each other? What comes to mind when you think about that? Like, what are you
So,
trying to communicate?
and that I think in this exercise is huge because it shows how little we realize we are communicating and receiving, and we act like we're just talking about, do you know where the mayonnaise is in the refrigerator? That's, well, I just want to know where the mayonnaise was. And no, because if she told you to go fuck yourself, then now you're all in your feelings about why she got to be so ugly. She's thinking to herself, why is he such an idiot? The mayonnaise has been in the same place for the last 20 years. He can't pick something up and move it to the side to see that's where it is. And so there's a lot going on, but all we realize is, well, she must be in a bad mood right now. And, and then, and it's just in understanding that I think we're trying to communicate all those things. I'm trying to
Yeah,
show you
you got it.
that I need you. And so
Need. That's a
when I find
great.
when I find myself unable to find something in the refrigerator, the first person I turn to is you. And I love you, and I am an idiot, and that's why I can't see the mayonnaise. But I know you're gonna be right on top of this. And she's thinking, uh, he is an idiot, but he does need me, and I love that
Yeah.
so much, and I want to be there for him, and I want to help. I want to be there for him because I want him to be there for me.
Let me take
And
it
I
a
think
step
we're
further. Let me take it even a step further. The wife has the self awareness to know that of her own imperfections.
and I know that I am an idiot in areas where
Yes,
I
you
will
got
need
it.
him.
That's a deeper.
And
Yeah.
that's, yeah, and that's the bond, that's the union. and and to and we do need that, and if we could slow down and express it just like you and I just did, then they would probably have sex in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, think about
it,
how we typically communicate something. He was touching on this, and I deal with this every day with couples that I spend time with, and then also dealt with it for 40 years of my life before it switched.
oh, I'm
So
not good. Just because I can talk about it objectively does not mean that I've aced
I,
it at
I'm
the house.
I'm what this portion like I'm pretty good at, and but so I'll give an example of a typical uh, example of communication between a couple. Okay. And there's a phrase that we use all the time. In some ways, I think it's even because people have gone to therapy. But so here's a phrase: I feel like you're being mean to me. Okay, all right. Now I want let's take the individual that said that. Okay, I feel like you're being mean to me. Okay, just think for a second what they're describing.
It's their response to something that you've done.
Think about this. In that phrase, are they not describing their external world? What is happening outside of them? So what they're actually doing is giving an interpretation of what's happening. The individual doesn't say, "Hey, I'm feel scared. I'm not appreciative of how you're talking to me right now. This doesn't feel good." Now, I mean, you can still point it out, but I'm focusing on what I am experiencing, right?
Hmm.
And then I can say things to you like, "Hey, can you please just talk to me in a different way?" Right? I can make requests of you, but anyway. So we typically communicate in that fashion. That's a phrase that is used more. I mean, it's common. It's essentially how most people communicate. You're probably familiar with that phrase. Um,
Sure.
and again, it's actually expressing an interpretation. An individual is not describing their experience.
So you lost me on there, not describing their experience. I thought it
They're
was
they're
an
describing
expression of
they're
their experience.
describing a quality of their experience. They're describing what's happening outside of them. They're they're attempting to describe what's happening inside, but it's done through
I
metaphor
get it.
rather than direct sharing.
And it's fucking confusing. Um,
And to think about what it indicates. Think about this. This is what Marshall was getting at. Essentially, the way he described that is a violent form of communication, because what it is saying is you are responsible for what I'm experiencing.
yeah, and that's tough. A to put on somebody else, and B to be the someone else that's put on. And so I I think that the it's so critical that and maybe we hopped over spending a whole episode on just reflection and parsing apart yourself. As if there was something wrong with a car, we would begin to take the thing apart until we figured out what was wrong with it. The more experience we had with taking cars apart, the more we could just listen and say, oh, that's the
You
and do
got
it.
it. That's a
And the
good
more
metaphor.
experience one more experience one has with identifying their self, their feelings, their emotions, their reactions, blah blah blah, the more they can be like, oh, that's this. But when you start, you just got to start taking shit apart and diagnosing where that is. Is it this? Is it that? And you'll probably come up with a lot of, yeah, it's that. Oh, and it's that. Oh, and it's this. Oh, and it's this too. Because if we leave these things unattended for 40 years, as I did, and I think as you did, then there's going to be a big fucking mess. And it's not like we can just take a car that's been ignored for 40 years, even if we are mechanics, and be like, oh, all it needs is an alternator and a battery and
Yeah,
some
yeah,
tires and
yeah,
it's going to
yeah,
run.
yeah,
No, man, it's still going to be fucked up.
yeah,
And so we need to do the same. I mean, it's just too simple if you let it be that you have to stop, dedicate the time and the resources, which most of the time is the time, and just focus on, we beat the drum of meditation. It's because that's such an important way to slowing down and being present. Once you're present, then you can identify the feelings that you're having and why you're having them, and you can identify where they come from, and is that even some shit you care about or like? Because it doesn't matter if you think that, oh man, I don't give a shit about things like that. It's the little kid in you does, and when it happens, that little motherfucker gets tore up about it, and you
hmm
react
yeah,
in very I don't want to say animated, but it's clear you are that emotion. So you are happy, every time, I don't know, the ball game comes on, it's a good memory. So you're happy. And every time church comes on, you want to cry because of something that happened when you were a kid. In reality, you don't think you like ball games and you don't think you really care that much about church. But both of them give me these huge emotional reactions that everybody around you has to deal with, and it is the first layer of your communication, because wherever you are emotionally and wherever you are or aren't in identifying that and where it's coming from, it's going to directly affect how you communicate with another human being who's probably as equally broken and fucked up as you are, and so they're going to be communicating just as broken and fucked up back.
yeah,
And 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 we try to mesh this together for 50 years, and then and look around and go, well, what happened? Why didn't this work out? And it's just because we've been tolerating. I think that we tolerate so much, thinking that's this. Oh, this is as good as it gets. Because, like you say, we're focusing on the external and how we react to it, versus on who am I, what do I want, what do I really value, what do I want to go towards, what kind of impact do I want to leave or not leave uh,
yeah.
in the society.
This
So I
goes.
don't even,
Let
I
me. You triggered a good. So think about this for a second. You ever had a situation with your partner where you say one thing, but they pick up on something else.
For sure.
So I just wanted to move us even deeper into reflecting on the multidimensionality of communication.
Hmm.
So we're touching on language. We're touching on describing our interiority to another person with language. Does that make sense? Well, that is an insanely complex thing for a human being, but possible for all of us with proper knowledge and guidance. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's two non-mechanics tearing a car apart and trying to tell each other about how their car
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
and
So
what it is.
yeah, think about that. So then, if you say something to her, but yet she picks up on something else, what is it that's being picked up on, right? So we know this. We know it intuitively. She's picking up on your energy. That's what she's picking up on. The tension in your system. What's wrong, baby? I can tell, right? Um, that is not just happening by like tone of voice. It's a part of it, but it's
Mm.
much deeper than that. It's actually a reflection of how connected we are, right? And and that we don't know that we're not super familiar with that. So I want to go back to something. Um, let's just take needs. Uh, Somehow I received this message when I was a kid that my needs were selfish. And what that did, because there was a complete disconnect from myself, right? Yeah, I had no clue uh, what was actually going on. Where do needs express themselves? Inside of me, hunger, yeah, right? I mean, things that come up that have energy and right and charge, and they animate us. If I'm hungry, it makes me move in the direction of food. You know, right? That's what they do, and what is of primary importance for us is to be so attuned with the things that come up and the things that are happening inside of us, right? That we can relate to them and communicate them if we need to, right? So let me try to like make this a little bit practical, okay? For
How?
part of what that happened as I grew, it just further removed me from the things that were occurring inside of me. And so, if just simply, if I needed space, or if I needed a hug, or if I don't, you know what I mean? If I needed
Whatever.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, whatever. I just didn't even, it didn't even register that that was there. It operated completely outside of my conscious awareness. And essentially, the way that acted with me is if a need came up, it was interpreted as selfish. That's the best way I can really articulate it, you know. And so I didn't even have a relationship with my own needs at all, right? Um, and so how would I communicate that, right? So what the way that the pattern in relationships was feeling like my needs weren't being met. Makes sense, and having nothing to do about it. No ability to communicate. It felt like a victim, like it was all happening to me. There was no power, no agency, right? And so then what would happen is I would just sort of back out of relationships until they would blow up, and the other person would make a decision to end it. You know. And so that was just the pattern, and until I recognized that I had no even relationship with my own needs, and then just in a healthy, non-judgmental. Uh, it doesn't make you weak. It doesn't, right? I
Hmm.
just had no relationship with that concept at all.
And it took it. I mean, you talking about understanding yourself, or somebody who can't even have a feeling, then learning how to identify. Oh well, when I was a little kid, this
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
And so I haven't been in touch with that shit since I was 4. And, there's a lot that's happened. I've had a lot of needs in between here and 4 that have clearly been neglected. Well, that's what we're talking about. That's the 40 years of dust you got to get knocked off and cleaned up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
you'll
Yeah. Yeah.
know, and as Jason knows now, when that flares up, if it flares up, hold on a second, that's not
I'm going to tell
my
you. I'll tell you how it
better
flares
half.
up.
That's me.
Well, let me say. I want to try to express a an outcome of this lack of awareness as a culture. Okay. So here's partly the outcome. Okay. Like as we've mentioned, all the health related things that are occurring in the country.
The
That's an
crisis
outcome.
in our
That's an
mm-hmm.
outcome. An outcome is a population that is always in their head, always thinking, consistently in the future. Like this is an outcome. An outcome is a higher than 50% divorce rate. That's an outcome. Another outcome is that because we're unaware of our conditioning and because we're unaware of how we've been conditioned to think we need things that we don't need, often what happens, a person can just refer to what immediately becomes uh, on their mind when they wake up. What are you thinking about? What are you focused on? And my guess will be it will be something like safety, security, connection. And we wake up and there's a lot of tension in the system. Okay. Um, and so another byproduct of it is a population that cannot be still, cannot sit down and be with themselves, have to be in constant motion, producing, acquiring. It's a result of a lack of inner agency. You follow? So a
Mm-hmm.
person can wake up, and that's fine. You've been asleep, nervous system comes back online, system's flooded with the to-do list. Okay, that's fine. But are you aware that if you sit down and take some breaths and breathe deeper into your stomach, that your mind will follow? That if you do that and you do it consistently enough, you'll dramatically alter the start of your day. And that has obviously significant impact. Uh, so, so we'll wake up, and then it's like we're unconsciously drawn in a direction of what we think we need. You follow?
Mm-hmm.
And we can feel such a sense of lack while we sit in a home with the refrigerator full, heat, water, clothes on our back, 2 cars in the driveway. You understand? And we are,
Spouse, kids.
you follow, and we are unsatisfied. And I'm telling you, the reason for that unsatisfaction is because we have not met ourselves yet. That's why, literally, you and I, you're one of 7+ billion beings on this planet. You are unique. That might suggest that's important. And it also might suggest that we should get to know ourselves since we're so unique on this planet among trillions and trillions of other organisms. And part of that uniqueness is our capacity for self-reference and self-awareness, and our capacity to transcend our selfish, self-centered. But the way I relate to that, instead of using the word self-centered, I typically use wound-centered existing. And so,
And I that brings up something, a thought I had, and anybody listening, I want them to know, because I know Jason and have for a long time. When he reframes, and obviously if I'm speaking out of turn, correct me, but I think when you reframe something like you just did, it's it in an attempt to lift one from blaming themselves, but it's not to skirt self responsibility
the
or responsibility or
self-responsibility is the
accountability
entire point.
or account. That's the whole
It's
point.
the
And
whole
so
point.
in being accountable, in being responsible and reflective and diving inside,
Yeah.
you can give yourself grace and not be so hard on yourself to say that it's self-centered.
Yes,
It's wound-centered.
it's just
And
yes.
there's in the last episode there was something similar, and I thought to myself, I don't want that to be misconstrued, because I know obviously the point is to dive inside. It's to be looking in the mirror all the time and be accountable for all things, including how you react to another human who's communicating with you. So, I wanted to make that point that there is, once you do this, there is a destructive route that one can take, and that is to not give yourself grace and to constantly be angry at yourself and blaming yourself for everything that's happening. And that's not you're going maybe down the right path, but you took a turn or got off in the weeds or the woods or something, because you're
Can I say something about that really
yeah,
quick?
for sure.
Okay. Um,
Because I think that's damaging. I
That's
think people can
shame.
hurt
So
themselves.
it would that would just be habit that is related to a lack of awareness, a habit that's related to a lack of a relationship with feeling, with the energies inside, with our tendency to label things that don't need a label. So it is the number one impediment for evolution and growth. What you're describing has been discussed and approached by human beings forever. The Buddha had a phrase called, or is referred to as the second arrow, and it's related to how we'll have a reaction, and then we'll notice something, how we're not seeing it really, we're not seeing it right, and then the second arrow is the judgment of what it is that we are discovering. So we relate to ourselves as if we're solid objects, and we're not. We're in flow, we're in flux, we're evolving. The idea is to discover. And so I can refer Carl Rogers, who is a major force for what might be called positive psychology. He is typically coined with a phrase that, to paraphrase, it goes something like this: it's paradoxical because as soon as you completely accept yourself and your life exactly where you are and it is, you open the door for change and movement. It's paradoxical, right? So I bump up against this all the time in almost everybody I see, and I could go into it in much greater depth. But what I would say is it's related to our cultural story of who we are. And we don't know that the point is to grow, to evolve, to be different in ways from one day to the next, right? We have this sort of idea in our culture, like we're going to find ourselves and that's it. Whoop, we're just shoot, and we're trying to develop good parts of ourselves and more confidence and all that's beautiful. That's all great, obviously. You know what I'm saying? But we're
But
unfamiliar.
it's a constantly evolving. You are a constantly
Yes.
evolving
Yeah.
human,
Yeah.
and because of that, you must continue to learn who you are and
Yeah.
evolve with it.
Yes. And so what you're describing, we would typically call shame. I When I work with people, I get them and I work to help them remove that label and just to start to relate to what's happening internally without labels and non-judgmentally. And if you really think about it, anytime somebody's, or if they're, I would say most of the time, if they're let's say a meditation teacher, okay, one of the uh, one of the qualities that will be encouraged is a non-judgmental orientation during the process, right? So human beings have been dealing with this tendency to judge themselves forever. So it's a huge habitual hurdle. It's habit. It's because we don't even know the relationship between a feeling and a thought. it's we're not even at the point where we can see how they're connected. And so when people are starting to do this work, the first step, I know this is going to sound paradoxical, but people are often just trying to name things. Like, okay, well, that might be shame, or that, you're just trying to start articulating what you're
Feeling.
what you're starting to feel. Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it's because it's so foreign. It's like just
Yes,
you lift the hood
different
on the car and
language.
you start pulling shit out. It's gonna be this rubber thing. It's bent. It looks
Yeah.
kind of like a S. You know what I mean? And then I've got this other rubber thing. Is it the same rubber? No, that one's more kind of like a hose. This one's more like a belt. So we'll call this one the rubber belt. And it's
Mm-hmm.
long. God dang, this thing's long. And when you're talking to your spouse or your significant other, whatever, uh, and they're taking their car apart and they pull out two rubber things and they don't, for whatever reason, they don't see the difference in there. They're both made of rubber. I mean, they're both circles. One of them's a little tighter circle than the other. And you're going, what the hell are you talking about? I've got two rubber things too, but one looks like a hose and one looks like a belt. What? And she says, yeah, they're both circles, but that's all I can give you. The one's kind of a circle and another shape, and the other one's just a circle. And it's and then we get upset and frustrated. Like, how can you not see exactly what I see when I look at these things? And it's if we stood back, okay, well, let's take time out. Let's talk to this couple. Well, what kind of car do you have? Whatever, a Chevy. All right, what kind of car does she have? A Ferrari. Okay, well, maybe it is a little fucking different.
Yeah.
Did you think about that? And maybe she was taught differently when she was bringing up and taught about rubber, and that it was really irrelevant. And that's all she got was it's rubber. And then they went on, and there was no more. Well, your parents or whoever taught you more about it and the shape of it and how you can identify a different thing. It's just different, and you can
Yeah.
see how different it is because ain't neither one of you mechanic. Because one's gonna walk up to you and call it the serpentine belt, and the other's going to walk up and they're going to say exactly what it is, and you're
Yeah.
both going to look like idiots. And if we could identify that what I'm saying right now is really not making as much sense as I need it to this other person, then you could slow it down and maybe try to articulate it a little more. And so a tactic I try to do is disarm any language that I may be using that could come across as anything other than. So what I'm about to try to say to you, human, I'm trying to elicit a positive response. And so any language that I use
Yeah, I got it.
that may dissuade a positive
It's
response
not on purpose.
is an accident.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm sorry. I'm working on communication. I'm working on delivery. Delivery is a big problem for me, and so I can explain to you this. This is a
yeah,
good thing. We're happy.
yeah,
Everybody's happy right now, and so if you're feeling something negative, that I'm probably saying it wrong because I can't even see how you can translate this into a negative. So, in doing that and simplifying it, on top of starting to identify your own feelings and how you feel, and maybe we'll get into the specifics, dive a little more into how and I think that at least Gen Xers, a lot of our needs were looked at as selfish, and that's just for the simple fact that we were thrown a key and said, we'll be home when we get home, where the refrigerator is. As a child, your needs just got shit all over,
yeah, 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 yeah.
and by the people that are entrusted the most to handle your needs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's probably a very common thing,
Yeah.
just specifically. So maybe we could dive in next time on how we are affected by before we even get going. So before we're 7, how affected we are by the culture,
Mm-hmm.
which is our parents are
Yeah.
the main delivery of the
We
culture
are
at the moment.
affected. We're affected by the culture of our mother's womb.
Yeah. And then up until we're 7, all this shit's being hammered in like concrete, and then we solidify around it. Almost, it's not really concrete, but if come from construction, concrete doesn't mean the end all be all. It's just a real big bitch to get through, and that's the same with this stuff. So it kind of is concreted in, and now we got to hammer it all out if we want to fix it. Now our parents obviously did do some good things, and because of that, well, we're even looking in the mirror, and we need to be grateful for that and thankful for that. And so I think maybe we'll dive into that and how culture is driven into us And it's for us to kind of unwind it if we have a hope of finding ourselves and having a good relationship with ourselves, understanding ourselves, really understanding when we talk about this thing about communication, why, how is it that she's picking up on this energy that I'm not even picking up on? Or how is it that I can't say one sentence without fucking it up? Okay, well, we can talk about that and how culture has driven us internally to be that way. And so that's what has affected this communication we've discussed today that's been so hard. All right, man. Well, that's good. I think that's good. I think we delivered some value today. And for everybody listening, we appreciate your time, your most valuable asset. We hope we did deliver some value to it. Until next time, we hope you have an awesome day.